you've decluttered, but you still feel a little bit unsettled, or your space doesn't feel quite right, it's probably because you're only focusing on one type of clutter. But in my experience, there are actually 9, and you need to be hitting most, if not all of them, in order to reap the full rewards and declutter your entire life. Let's go. Hi guys, it's Laura and I help you live a simpler, happier, more spacious life. And it is Sunday while I'm recording this, so I'm doing my weekly reset. So technically, you're getting 2 videos in one. Lucky you. Now we all know that decluttering is about more than just dumping or decluttering a whole pile of stuff. If you really want to embrace minimalism and declutter your entire life, in my opinion, you have to be hitting at least 8 of these areas. So let's play a little decluttering bingo while I change these towels, see how many you can hit. How many of you can get a full house? I'm going to start with the middle square, which would normally be your free space. This is the one that I feel is the least essential, but is probably the most prevalent. It is aesthetic minimalism. You know, and we see so much of this. It is those white bare walls, you know, hardly any furniture, and when there is, it's like rattan or it's wicker furniture. We all know what I'm talking about. It's the stuff that you see on Pinterest, on the cover of magazines. It is what is represented to us as minimalism. And listen, if you like that look, that is great. Go for it. I personally find myself gravitating a little bit more towards it these days. But your home does not have to be white. It can be colorful and cheerful, and you can still, you know, hang things on your walls, and you can still have things on display. Minimalism is simply about conscious curation. You know, it is choosing to focus on the things that are most important to you, the things that bring you the most amount of joy or value, and then just letting the rest of it fall away. And there is no specific number or color scheme attached to that. So I wanted to start with that because I feel like that is a lot of what we see, but it's not necessarily an important or necessary part of the puzzle. You don't need your home to look like that in order to be considered a minimalist. So that is why this is your kind of free space. If you want the aesthetic look, great. If you don't, you can still mark this one off because it's not essential. Okay, let's go tidy my desk and talk about the other 8 factors that I feel are actually integral to minimalism. Next on our bingo card then is environmental or physical minimalism. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I think we're all familiar with it. We've probably all ticked it off our list to some extent already, but it is our stuff. Physical items that are in our homes, our offices, our gardens, just our general physical environment, our surroundings. This is probably where most people start, myself included, and I feel there's a really good reason for that. It's a really good starting place. The reason for that is this is the most visible. Like, this is where you're actually going to see a lot of results. You can actually see the change in your surroundings. The rest of the things, which I'll come to discuss, are not really as obvious. You know, they're a little bit more hidden, so the full effects aren't as immediately evident. They're not as in your face. It might even take you a while to actually see any results or get any benefit from them, whereas this one is a little bit more immediate. You know, you can clear out your closet, you can empty out a drawer, and you can see and feel that impact immediately. So that is why environmental or physical minimalism, physical decluttering is a great place to start. You're going to see results. It's going to get you a lot of the way there, honestly. But if you're ready to declutter your entire life, let's move on to this next one. And a little word of warning up front, they are going to get progressively more difficult. So if you thought that this was kind of an obvious or an easy one, oh, just you wait. Digital minimalism. Now, I stay on top of this by clearing my digital house, if you will, every Sunday as part of my weekly reset. So I delete files and folders on my laptop that I no longer need, plus photos and videos that would otherwise clog up my phone. I back up everything. I clear out my email inbox. I just make sure that all of my digital stuff is kind of squared away so that I can start the new week with a fresh slate and a fresh new schedule. But I have to say, I've always found this to be a little bit of a weird one because digital stuff, because it's not tangible, it doesn't really feel real, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, spending money on your credit card. That's not really real. That's not really real money. So this one can be a little bit harder to get a handle on. But the truth is that we spend a huge amount of our daily lives either online or engaged with some form of technology. And that's not going to go away anytime soon. Like, it's becoming a bigger and bigger part of our lives. So part of this is unfollowing those accounts that make us feel bad about ourselves or make us question what we're doing with our lives. Again, that conscious curation. This is something that I've been working on, kind of chipping away at over the years. It's also about limiting the amount of information that we're exposed to, being intentional about what we look at. So I used to have a huge problem with, saving articles that looked interesting, and I would end up with hundreds, or saving videos, YouTube videos that I thought I would want to come back to, but I just realized I would never have the time to actually go through all of that stuff. I think mainly what this comes down to is just reminding ourselves that we are in charge of technology. Like, we are the boss. We are the ones who have a say in how it works and how we interact with it. We dictate to a very large extent what we see online and how much of our time we spend there. Look, there is no point decluttering your home, so that you can easily find your keys, for example, but then not focusing on your digital life and not being able to find an important document or an important email when you need it. Digital minimalism is already important, but I think it's going to become more and more important. So if you haven't already started decluttering your digital life, I would suggest that you start now. Okay, let's get these plants watered. Next is probably the most important. That is temporal minimalism. It is how you spend your time. It is decluttering your calendar, your schedule, your to-do list, so you're only focusing on the things that are important to you, the things that add the most value to your life. It's really about your priorities. It's really giving yourself some breathing space so that you're not rushing from one thing to the next. I'm currently working on this. I'm trying to only do the grocery shopping and run errands every second week, and it forces me to kind of be more prepared. It forces me to think ahead. It forces me to prioritize, because instead of going out one day to the post office and going out the next day to the grocery store and the next day to pick up a gift, no, I am condensing all that down. I am really making the most of my time. I'm thinking ahead and I'm being prepared. I think it's so easy to say, it doesn't matter, I'll just pop out again if I need to, or yeah, sure, I can fit that thing in. But it is taking up precious time and headspace that could be put to better use. But here's the thing, let's say you declutter your home, like physical items, you create space for yourself. You're not going to want to run out then and just like fill that space again full of clutter. The same is true for your schedule. You're creating space and time for yourself, and you don't want to pack that full of unnecessary, unwanted obligations. Instead, you want to give yourself that breathing space, have a little bit more buffer time, and really utilize your time to the best of your ability. Focus on the things that matter the most to you. So cancel the things that you just don't need to be doing. See what you can batch as well. See which similar tasks you can put together so that you can, get through them a little bit more efficiently, so that you're really getting the most out of your time and spending it in ways that are either necessary to you or that really fill you up. Time is one of those resources that you can't get back once it's gone. Most other things are replaceable, but precious minutes, precious moments are not. By the way, let me know if you'd like me to break down each of these different types into separate videos. I can kind of only scratch the surface here, unless I want this video to be like a bajillion hours long. So if you want to see a deep dive into each one, or there are specific ones that you'd like to hear more about, where I share kind of like the tips and strategies to make sure that you get the most out of that particular one, then yeah, let me know. Okay, let's get these clothes in the dryer. Next is sustainable minimalism, and this is a very specific type of minimalism. I feel like most minimalists will naturally gravitate towards it, or it can be a natural consequence of decluttering, but not necessarily. But it is living your life in a more sustainable way and trying to reduce your carbon footprint. She says, while shoving clothes into the dryer, listen, we're none of us perfect. I do my part in other ways, and I think that's probably the point of this whole thing. It's not about perfection, it's simply about making progress. There is no final destination, you just keep plugging away at it. But generally, the more you declutter, the less you consume, and when you do, you're more likely to focus on things that are better quality or that can be reused. But obviously that is not always the case, which is why this one is separate. You know, just because you're decluttering doesn't necessarily mean that you are doing it in a sustainable or an eco-friendly way. I know for me, I've often felt a little bit of a sting when I'm getting rid of something that technically is still usable. Now I do try and donate or recycle where I can, but yeah, it can still be a little bit of a struggle to let go of something that you know that technically you could still use. I have to say I find it very humbling and uncomfortable to realize how my previous overconsumption has contributed to pollution and to landfills. Even the stuff that I do donate or that I do recycle, that's not to say that I won't end up in a landfill anyway. I think for most people, decluttering is about creating space. You know, it is about living a calmer, more content life. It is helping you focus on your priorities, whereas sustainable minimalism is more about living in harmony with the planet. Obviously, the way that you achieve that is very similar. The end goal is very similar, but I think the kind of initial motivation is different. Let me give you an example. Okay, food. So personally, I declutter so that my pantry isn't just overrun with stuff. It's not really messy. You know, I can find and use what I need when I need it. I don't want to end up wasting a lot of food at the end of the week. I just want to make it quicker and easier to prepare meals for myself and my family, particularly as I already hate cooking. So whatever makes that process run a little bit more smoothly, I am all in favor. A sustainable minimalist, on the other hand, and obviously there will be some overlap, but they will focus more on, you know, foods that have no packaging or foods that are not processed. They will focus on, you know, maybe more plant-based things. They probably won't buy any meat. Like I said, a lot of overlap between the two, but the motivation is different. Speaking of motivation, let's tick off a few smaller tasks from my list. First one being dressing this bed. Okay, let's move on to something that can be at the heart of a lot of minimalism, and that is financial minimalism. Similar to decluttering your schedule, decluttering your finances is all about getting rid of unwanted expenses so that the priorities are taken care of. It's not about scrimping and saving every single cent and, you know, never spending on anything frivolous. It's simply about creating breathing space in your budget. Again, it's about you being in control. It is you deciding where and when you're going to spend your money so that the essentials are taken care of. Minimalists don't necessarily spend less money. In fact, in a lot of cases, they actually spend more because they focus on quality items or they focus on experiences. So they might buy, you know, a really expensive winter coat, or they might splash out on a luxury cruise. The truth is that you could declutter almost everything in your life, but you will never feel a sense of contentment. You will never feel a sense of security if you are either wasting your money or you simply don't have enough of it. It's a privileged position to be in. Financial minimalism is making your money work for you. Spending it on the things that bring you the most joy, the most comfort, the most security, whatever that looks like in your circumstances. Next one then is probably the hardest one for me. So let's head downstairs and we'll talk about it. Mindful minimalism. Now this kind of incorporates a lot of what we've already talked about in terms of being intentional about how you spend your time, about the decisions you make, but where I specifically struggle is with negative thoughts. Just allowing negative thoughts to clutter up my mind and push out the positive. Same with negative emotions. You know, I have a tendency to be a very emotional person, and in some ways that's great because I feel a lot of elation and joy and stuff like that. But on the flip side, then I can experience very low lows, because the truth is that everything around you could be absolutely perfect, but if your head isn't right, it's going to be almost impossible to fully reap the rewards, to experience all of the benefits of decluttering, of minimalism. Try to practice being present. You know, a therapist once told me that I am very future focused. You know, I'm kind of always chasing the next thing. I'm always looking for the next goal, the next opportunity. But it's like those cartoons where, you know, they attach a carrot on a string, and no matter how fast you run, no matter how far you run, you're never going to get it. It's always going to be just out of reach. And that is the exact same for the future. Same with the past. If that's what you're stuck on, it's going to be very frustrating because those things are always going to be out of your reach. So it's about focusing on what is immediately in front of you, you know, the current moment. And this is something that I am, like I said, practicing but struggling with, because the present moment is all we're guaranteed. This right here, right now, like this is it. Something that I also have a tendency to do is to ruminate. You know, I can go round and round with the same argument or the same scenario over and over again, and most of the time it's like completely imagined, like made up stuff in my head. It's not even stuff that's happening. You know, I can spend hours, days, months even going over all of the different ways that, you know, somebody has wronged me or how some situation was completely unfair. Most of the time I will invent this scenario in which I get the better of somebody. You know, when I was a kid, I was very shy. I didn't, you know, speak up for myself as much as I could have or as much as I should have. So now, as a grown-up, I find that I am regularly kind of imagining these scenarios in which someone tries to take advantage of me or tries to talk down to me, and I completely cut them down. You know, like no matter what they do, no matter what they say, I have the perfect response to it. It is exhausting. So yeah, mindfulness minimalism is something that I am still very much practicing and learning. It's about kind of watching your thoughts, becoming more aware of the things that you are focusing on. And it might not be easy, you know, you might need the help of a therapist or of someone else to get you through this, because obviously it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows and positivity and happy thoughts. But learning to live in the moment as much as you can, I do feel is a really valuable life skill, and like I said, one that I am really trying hard to harness. And here's a great opportunity to practice it. Let's go fold some laundry. Now for probably the most difficult for most people. I am almost expert level at this now, and unfortunately that is not a good thing. Relational minimalism, because sadly people can be clutter too. Cutting negative or toxic people out of your life and focusing on relationships that are nourishing and nurturing and, you know, mutually beneficial and fulfilling. I somehow end up as everyone's free therapist. I think it's because I'm a very, you know, sympathetic, very empathetic person, which means that I become the default shoulder to cry on, which for, you know, true friends, for close family members is absolutely fine because there's a give and take there. But wow, there are a lot of takers out there. And listen, I know a lot of people don't do it consciously. You know, it's not like a purposeful thing that they do, and sometimes you have to have a difficult conversation with someone just to remind them of the give and take aspect of a friendship or a relationship. But sometimes you just have to cut your losses and walk away. I feel like this could be one of the worst forms of clutter because, you know, not only is it very damaging, but it can lead to excess clutter in other areas of your life too. For example, digital clutter, you know, with all of the text messages and phone calls, unwanted text messages and phone calls that you're getting. It can lead to a lot of temporal clutter, you know, all of the time that you are pumping into these relationships that are going nowhere. It's mindful clutter because of all of the headspace it's taking up. If relational clutter is bad enough, it can kind of consume a huge amount of your life. And kind of like with physical stuff, it might not start out as clutter. You know, when you first embark on that journey, it might be useful and valuable to you. You know, it might play a positive part in your life, but as time goes on, it becomes less and less valuable. Like I said, it's probably the most difficult one to deal with, but as soon as you realize that you are worth more, as soon as you stop putting up with bad behavior, as soon as you stop putting up with people who are only out for themselves, you know, they're only in it for what they can get out of it, for what they can extract from it, you will feel an immense burden being lifted. Limit your exposure to these people, or if you can, walk away completely. It will have a huge positive knock-on effect in multiple other areas of your life. Not an easy one, but wow, an impactful one. Then there is what I like to call lifestyle minimalism. Now, this will be different for every person because obviously we all live our lives in different ways, but basically it is incorporating the minimalist mindset into all areas of your life. It is spotting clutter in whatever form it takes in your life and getting rid of it. It is not getting bogged down in, you know, minor decisions that don't mean much in the grand scheme of things. It is not ruminating on things that you have no control over. It is choosing to live a more healthy life, whatever that means for you. It is deciding where you want to devote your time and energy in every aspect of your life. That could be mentally, it could be emotionally, it could be spiritually. It could even come down to how you store your clothes. You know, folding clothes is a big aspect of the KonMari method, for example. So it can come down to choosing not only what you are keeping, but how that is going to show up in your life. It is evaluating everything. So your opinions, your perspectives, your privileges, your beliefs, the way you do things, and then choosing the type of life you want to lead and the person that you want to be. You know, decluttering is often focused on what we are removing from our lives. There's a huge emphasis on that, but I think it's just as important, if not more important, to figure out what we're going to do with what's left. We create space for a reason. Remember what your reason is. Like, what are you hoping to get out of that? And then lead your life in accordance with that. You know, keep that in mind as you are going through your daily life. Now, at this point, you might be all fired up to kind of face into the different types of minimalism that up until now you have maybe been neglecting, but it is worth noting that there can be downsides to decluttering. So before you dive headfirst into everything I've discussed in this video, go ahead and learn about the ugly side of things. Also, who got bingo? Until next time, go mila magweb. Agus feki me shif shigalua. Slán!